What if I told you that in 1967, when Muhammad Ali was facing 5 years in prison for refusing to fight in Vietnam, one of America's richest men walked into his hotel room with a briefcase containing more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes? And what if I told you that this businessman didn't just offer Ali $10 million to change his mind about the war, he threatened to destroy him if he refused? But what happened next shocked everyone in that room, including the millionaire himself. Ali's response was so morally devastating that it didn't just end the conversation. It changed one man's entire understanding of what money could and couldn't buy. Chicago, Illinois. So March 15, 1967. The Palmer House Hotel. Muhammad Ali sat alone in his suite on the 18th floor, staring out at Lake Michigan, while the weight of his impossible situation pressed down on him. In 3 days, he would face the Illinois State Athletic Commission, where they would strip him of his boxing license. In 6 weeks, federal prosecutors wanted to send him to prison for 5 years. His crime: refusing military induction. The government had confiscated his passport. State athletic commissions were suspending his license. His fights were canceled, costing him millions. At 25, at the peak of his powers, Muhammad Ali was watching his career disintegrate because he wouldn't compromise his beliefs. But Ali's problems were about to become either much worse or much better, depending on how he responded to what was about to walk through his door. The elevator dinged softly, and out stepped a man who controlled more wealth than most small nations. Silver-haired and impeccably dressed, he moved with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved with money. His business empire spanned defense contracts worth nearly $500 million annually, making him one of the Vietnam War's biggest financial beneficiaries. This man had built his fortune on a simple principle: everything had a price. He had bought politicians, judges, and generals. He had purchased silence, loyalty, and cooperation. Until today. Behind him walked 2 associates. One carried a leather briefcase that seemed unusually heavy. The other carried manila folders containing detailed financial projections of exactly how much Muhammad Ali stood to lose if he continued down his current path. The numbers were staggering, upwards of $20 million in lost earnings over the next decade. The businessman knocked on Ali's door with the authority of someone accustomed to immediate attention. When Ali opened it, the man introduced himself simply as someone who could solve all of the champion's problems. Something in his tone, not threatening exactly, but absolutely certain, made Ali step aside and let the 3 men enter. What happened in that hotel room over the next 90 minutes would remain one of the best-kept secrets in American business history. Only decades later, when the businessman's private journals were discovered after his death, would the full conversation be revealed. But those who were present that day would never forget the moral confrontation that unfolded between 2 men who represented completely different visions of American values. The businessman got straight to business. The briefcase contained $2 million in cash, more money than most Americans would see in 3 lifetimes. But that was just the down payment. He was prepared to guarantee Ali another $8 million over 5 years, plus endorsement deals and a triumphant return to boxing with no legal consequences. The proposal was simple. Report for military induction Monday morning. Serve time in a comfortable assignment far from combat. A few photo opportunities in uniform. Maybe some exhibition matches for troops. Then quiet discharge. No one expected him to become a war hero. They just needed him to stop being a symbol of resistance. Charts showed Ali's projected lost earnings. Graphs demonstrated endorsement values. Bank statements proved the money was real and waiting for his signature. But something in the room was changing. As the businessman spoke, Ali's famous smile had faded. His relaxed posture had stiffened. His eyes had taken on a quality that his boxing opponents knew well. The look of a man who had been pushed too far. When the businessman finished his presentation and gestured toward the briefcase full of money, Ali's response came in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, but somehow filled the entire suite. "Sir, can I ask you something? Do you have children?" The question caught the businessman completely off guard. After 40 years of high-stakes negotiations, he had expected anger, gratitude, or shrewd bargaining. He hadn't expected a personal question. Yes, he replied uncertainly. He had children. 3 of them. Do you love them? Ali continued. Of course he loved them. What kind of question was that? Would you sell them? The businessman's face flushed with indignation. What was Ali suggesting? Of course he wouldn't sell his children. The very idea was absurd. Ali nodded slowly. Then you understand why I can't take your money. The businessman looked confused. What did his children have to do with Ali's military service? What Ali said next would haunt the businessman for the rest of his life. Sir, my conscience is not separate from who I am. It's not something I own that I can sell to someone else. My conscience is me. When you ask me to sell my conscience, you're asking me to sell myself, and I'm not for sale at any price. Ali stood up and walked to the window overlooking Lake Michigan. When he turned back to face his visitors, something had transformed in his demeanor. The uncertainty and worry that had marked his face for weeks was gone, replaced by absolute clarity. You came here thinking you could buy Muhammad Ali, but Muhammad Ali can't be bought because Muhammad Ali is not a thing. I'm a human being with beliefs and principles and a relationship with God. You can take away my title, you can take away my money, you can put me in prison, but you can't take away who I am inside unless I let you. And I won't let you. The businessman had negotiated with presidents and prime ministers. He had faced down corporate raiders and union leaders. But he had never encountered anything like the moral certainty emanating from this 25-year-old athlete. For the first time in decades, he found himself at a loss for words. But his associates were not so stunned. One of them, a lawyer who specialized in pressure tactics, stepped forward with a different approach. If Ali wouldn't take the money, perhaps he needed to understand the full consequences of his refusal. They had done their research. They knew exactly how to hurt him. The lawyer opened another folder and began reading from it like an indictment. Ali's parents would lose their home. The mortgage was held by a bank the businessman controlled. His brother would lose his job at a factory owned by one of their subsidiaries. The Louisville gym where Ali had trained as a boy would find its lease mysteriously non-renewable. Every business, every person, every institution that had supported Ali would face financial pressure until they abandoned him. This was no longer an offer. It was a threat wrapped in economic warfare. The lawyer was still talking when Ali did something that shocked everyone in the room. He started to laugh. Not bitter or sarcastic laughter, but genuine amusement, as if he had just heard the funniest joke of his life. You don't get it, do you? Ali said, his voice filled with something that might have been pity. You think you're threatening me with losing things I care about, but you're actually showing me exactly why I can't take your money. Ali walked closer to the 3 men, his presence somehow filling the entire room. If I take your money, if I compromise my beliefs for $10 million, what message does that send to every young person in America who's trying to decide what they believe in? What does it tell every black person who's being told they can't achieve their dreams? What does it say to everyone who's ever been asked to sell their soul for money? The businessman began to understand that he had fundamentally miscalculated. He had assumed that Ali's stance was negotiable, that his principles were flexible, that his conscience could be purchased like any other commodity. But he was facing something he had never encountered in 4 decades of business. A man who truly meant what he said. Ali continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. You want to buy my silence because you know that what I'm saying is powerful. You want to buy my cooperation because you know that my resistance is dangerous to people who profit from war. But don't you see, the very fact that you're here, offering me this money, proves that what I'm doing is right. The room fell into absolute silence. The businessman, for the first time in his adult life, was experiencing something he had never felt before. Shame. Not embarrassment or frustration or anger, but deep, genuine shame at what he had just attempted to do. He had tried to purchase a man's soul. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had become so accustomed to viewing everything through the lens of profit and transaction that he had forgotten some things in life were not commodities. Some principles were not for sale. Some people could not be bought. Ali must have seen something change in the businessman's face because his voice grew gentler. "Sir, I don't blame you for making this offer. In your world, everything probably does have a price, but in my world, some things are more valuable than money. My relationship with God, my commitment to peace, my responsibility to stand up for what I believe is right. These things aren't negotiable." What happened next surprised everyone in the room, including Ali himself. The businessman walked over to the briefcase, closed it, and handed it to one of his associates. Then he did something completely unprecedented in his business career. He apologized. Not a strategic apology or a face-saving gesture, but a genuine expression of regret for what he had attempted to do. He told Ali that he had spent so many years in a world where everything could be bought and sold that he had forgotten there were still people who couldn't be purchased. Meeting Ali had reminded him of something he had lost along the way, the understanding that some things in life were sacred. The three men left the hotel, but the businessman couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. That night he announced to his board that his company would cease all defense contract work. The decision cost shareholders hundreds of millions, but he no longer cared about the money. 6 months later, he liquidated a significant portion of his wealth and established the largest private peace foundation in American history. The initial endowment was $50 million, 5 times what he had offered Ali. The foundation's first major grant funded scholarships for young people who showed moral courage in standing up for their beliefs. Years later, the businessman sent Ali a letter thanking him for refusing his money. The encounter in that Chicago hotel room, he wrote, had been the most important business meeting of his life, not because of any deal made, but because of a transaction that wasn't. The businessman's Peace Foundation still operates today. Its mission statement contains a quote attributed simply to a teacher. "Some things are not for sale at any price. These are usually the things most worth having." Those who knew the story understood that the greatest education of his life had come from a young athlete who taught him the true value of saying no to $10 million.